Hey, what's up gang? Kawaii50 here with another fake Grand Order video, and we had some positive responses to the tier list, let me tell you what. We're kind of at a point where people are like, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? So, well, I'm doing this. What is the this? This, we are going to be ranking singularities and main interludes. That is the goal. However, I want to keep this NA friendly, so I'm not going to be talking about anything that hasn't been released on NA just yet, so we're only going to go up through Atlantis. So please keep that in mind when I inevitably do not include things within the tier list. These opinions are my own, please don't get mad, yada, 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 yada. Okay, we're good. We're all good on that. If you enjoyed this video, please sure to go ahead, like, subscribe, leave me ideas down below, show this to grandma, whatever works. Anyways, let's go ahead and let's start ranking. Remember, no matter how this goes, someone will be upset. It's just the rules. Okay, I'm going to try to go in order as best I can. So we're of course going to start with Flame-Contaminated City Fuyuki. Not gonna lie, chat, Fuyuki is really what turned me on to Fake Grand Order. When I initially tried to play this game on JP, I actually read the translation of the Fuyuki story over on the internets as I was trying to play through it. And I think Fuyuki was a fantastic introduction to the game. You got to have all of these threads that connected to previous Fate Stay Night, Fate Zero adaptations. You got to see your favorite characters come in but looked a little different, like Caster Ku, for example, that Medusa that we will unjustly never see if you're looking at the First Order anime. There were a lot of good things that happened in there, and having a final showdown against Artoria and having Mash show her power there, that alone made you go, wow, okay, this actually means business, and we're actually going to be doing some crazy stuff. Now, again, Fuyuki did need rewritten, because a couple of other parts, they kind of... It was rough. It was a rough draft initially in the translation on NA, so that does need to be addressed. However, overall, I still don't think that detracts from Fuyuki. I think it was a great introduction to the game. We're going to go ahead and we're going to chuck Fuyuki in the A tier. So, starting off strong. Okay, next up is Orleans. And Regend memes aside, Orleans is... It's okay, I guess. I mean, it does suffer from a lot of this is beginning arc syndrome, and there are a lot of issues that bounce around with it. I do quite enjoy the hunt for Siegfried part, sort of like we need to find this mythical legend in order to take down this dragon, and it does give a really solid introduction of Jean Alter, and that I definitely do enjoy. I love that little playoff. That was a pretty surprising moment when you find out that evil Jean is going to be one of your big antagonists. Plus, the fight against the Demon God Pillar is super cool as well. I'm actually going to go ahead and put Orleans down in the C tier. Remember, we're trying to abridge this so this video doesn't go on for 48 years. Next up is Septem, and I've got to be honest, I generally agree with public opinion on Septem. As far as Septem goes, I mean, a lot of the stuff with Nero just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. I don't like how, like, Boudica ends up becoming her friend over the course of all of these stories. Septem, in general, just kind of feels rough. It is a very, very rough story. This is a huge, like, transitionary period in the story, and I know a lot of people personally that actually did end up dropping the game because of the writing when it came to Septem. Septem was just not that great, so Septem, easy dump into the D tier. I don't think anyone's going to be upset with me at that. Okay, next this brings us to Okeanos, Drake's fantastic ocean adventure, and it was a pretty damn good ocean adventure. I loved the introduction of Jason. Not gonna lie, I actually did enjoy Jason as a result of this story. I liked him as a character back then, and I'm really liking him right now in Olympus, but we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get to that in a second. Drake is a great combination for Ritsuka Gudao, whoever you want to call them, and she really goes about teaching a lot of things that end up allowing Gudao to evolve into the absolute badass master that they are by the time we end up getting to the Lostbelt. So just for the seeds of character development in our protagonist alone, I'm actually going to chuck Okeanos up in the B tier. After Okeanos, we get to London, and London is kind of all over the place in regards to quality. There are some things in London I really feel like are big missteps. I really don't like how they end up utilizing Lancer Artoria Alter in this. That is a character I feel like deserves a lot of justice. Introduction of Kentoki was super cool. I did really like that implementation. And I like the sort of murder mystery vibes, the wandering around the foggy streets while you're looking out for Jack the Ripper. That in and of itself was enjoyable. But there were definitely just, things about London I kind of, I don't. I'm going to chuck London in the C tier. That's really all I got to say. Give Lancer Artoria Alter some justice. Damn it. Alright, next up is E Pluribus Unum, and I'm sure you've heard me talk about this on stream, but E Pluribus Unum is really where the story started getting going for me. Maeve and Ku Alter just felt like this absolutely colossal threat, and having to sort of gather the ragtag team together to go on this sort of war spree through America to try to get to the capital to take them down, that felt really, really good. That felt like a nice little episodic Monster of the Week anime, sort of a Stardust Crusaders sort of dealio, if you will. So E Pluribus Unum, that had a lot of good things behind it. Ku Alter felt like this super substantial threat, and we got introductions to a lot of really promising characters that have gone down as really beloved figures in Fate Grand Order history. Nightingale, of course, being one of the primary ones, getting more established after her Mercedes role in the tower incident with Dante's. So E Pluribus Unum, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to chuck in the B tier. I think it gets to live up there, and that's pretty fine. Oh, Camelot. The big boy. What can't we say about Camelot? It got movies, and whether or not you are for or against the quality of those movies, it got movies for a very, very good reason. So many moments in Camelot are just etched into the psyche, the consciousness of the Fate Grand Order fandom, even to this day. Arash's final stand, having to fight against Gawain and hating literally your entire life, the encroaching threat of the map closing in as you are trying to get closer and closer to the Lion King to finally take her down and right those wrongs. Bedivere still remains one of the greatest characters in FGO solely because of how he ends up tying Camelot all together. Camelot firmly has to go up in the A tier. And of course, next up is the big boy, the one that got the anime, Babylonia. Babylonia's anime, so incredibly deserved. I'm going to go ahead and chuck Babylonia into the S tier and not even bother worrying about, jerking you around or anything like that. Babylonia is truly phenomenal. Some people will say that it seems like the Singularity drags on for a little too long, but I cannot disagree more. There were so many moments in Babylonia where I just really felt connected to that particular cast of characters. I loved hanging out with Ishtar, even though Ishtar herself is not super my bag. Caster Gilgamesh is a truly incredible servant that I am super glad I 10-10-10'd. Leonidas finally gets a little bit of the spotlight. We're still waiting on an Ushiwakamaru skin from this Singularity in particular, and Tiamat was a substantial threat, and really, even more so than the Lion King in the previous Camelot Singularity, you truly felt like the world was ending with Babylonia. Absolutely impeccably done. Babylonia easily goes into the S tier. Solomon. I have not seen the Solomon movie. I can't really talk about that. I've seen clips, but I haven't seen the actual movie. But Solomon is really the Avengers, the culmination of FGO. Everyone is here. It is the Smash Brothers moment where everybody comes back to show up and help you fight the big bad. If you played Solomon on its initial release, it really, really hits different than if you end up clearing it several years later. Just that feeling of all the players on the server going around to take down the demon god pillar was a truly momentous feeling. One of the few times the Fate Grand Order community truly felt united against a common foe. Honestly, if I didn't have that experience, I'd be like, this is a solid entry with some great emotional payoffs, feels like a good arc, but a lot of the stuff that's building up to that is just more action than anything else. I might be tempted, if that was the case, to put Solomon into the B tier, but just because I had that clear experience and it felt so good, combined with the final fight against Goetia, Solomon gets to go live in the A tier with the rest of these items. Okay, let's get into the Epic of Remnant, and we're going to start with Shinjuku Phantom Incident. Shinjuku Phantom Incident. It does have some really good things in there. We've, of course, got the Jean and Artoria costumes. Every scene with Cavall II is an absolute delight, and it does have this nice little air of mystery going around it with some fancy antagonists like Hessian Lobo. But I feel like the longer Shinjuku Phantom Incident drug on, the more I was kind of hoping it would be over. I really wasn't feeling it by the time I got to the tower. It did. What some people say about Babylonia, I feel like is true for Shinjuku Phantom Incident. I think the story drug on a little longer than it really needed to. Shinjuku Phantom Incident, I'm going to go ahead and chuck in the C tier. Some people are going to say Agartha should just immediately go here, but honestly, I don't think it was nearly that bad. I really don't. Was it still not even close to being one of the top FGO arcs? Yes, by a country mile. There were a lot of issues with it. It did have the similar dragging problems that Shinjuku Phantom Incident did. I did enjoy going around to the different cities and kind of like meeting all the different queens and seeing what was going on with them. And I did get the introduction of Scheherazade, which I really enjoyed as a character. And I still enjoy as a character to this day. I hope I get extra noble phantasms of her. But as far as the final confrontation, all the stuff with Dahut and all that, I felt like that kind of fell flat. But we're going to say Agartha was okay. Agartha gets to live in C tier. 7 Duels of Swordmasters. Some of you might expect this to be going all the way up here, but I'm just not that super jazzed about 7 Duels of Swordmasters. I'll give you this, the final confrontation against Musashi and Kojiro is absolutely amazing. It is transcendent. Muramasa, incredible. I cannot wait to pull that man. However, the actual conflicts against each individual swordmaster themselves, they honestly sort of felt like I dread using this term at the expense of upsetting people, but they felt like filler. They really felt like filler. Raiko and Shutendoji fighting them honestly kind of felt tacked on. I would say if I had to pick the fights I enjoyed the most, the ones that had the most emotional weight for me were definitely Hosoin Inshun and Sasaki Kojiro at the end. Those were the moments where I was like out of my seat, really excited to do 7 Duels of Swordmasters. Beyond that, it just felt kind of rote and normal. I'm still going to chuck 7 Duels of Swordmasters over in the B tier, though. That strong opening and that strong ending makes up for the fairly mediocre middle, in my mind. Heretical Salem. Controversial, I know. I really like Salem. I really like Salem. Some people will say, oh, you know, it's a flat finish for Epic of Remnant. It really is. Some people will say that. However, I loved the sense of dread. I loved the feeling that stuff was going wrong in this town. There was this pervading sense of unease in every little bit of text in Heretical Salem. And it honestly kind of felt like I was reading Higurashi or Umineko or something like that. I was legitimately on the edge of my seat, trying to figure out what was going to happen next, trying to figure out what was going on with the witches, with these outer gods. Why are the dead rising from their graves? I really, maybe it's just because I'm a fan of horror. Maybe that's really it. But Heretical Salem really hit me in the right spot, to the point where I'm going to put Heretical Salem up in the A tier. Yes, I know. Let's get into some of the extra interludes before we go ahead and pop on over to Lostbelt. So we'll start with Christmas in the Underworld, since Christmas in the Underworld is running right now. Solid introduction of Ereshkigal, I've got to say. However, really not much else in my mind. It was a good introduction to a beloved character, but I'm not super jazzed on Attila the Santa, and honestly kind of like 7 Duels of Swordmasters. A lot of the fights at the different gates felt a little forced, but it felt even more forced than anything else. Like, okay, we just need to make sure we have antagonists in order to fill this up and give players an amount of content to play through. So I'm actually going to chuck Merry Christmas in the Underworld over in the D tier, despite the good introduction of Ereshkigal. Seraph, you already know I'm biased, but this is going to be a good one. I legitimately believe Seraph needs to be the next Fate Grand Order anime. I really do. I loved every single bit of Seraph. Of course, I'm already predisposed to loving BB, but I loved Melt's whole story arc. Melt's whole story arc, once you get to the end, you're like, oh God. Melt really cares about us. She has literally broken the laws of space and time for us. That is absolutely nutty. I love this character. Kiara, I felt, was a great antagonist, a truly great antagonist. I enjoyed Kiara a lot more after playing through Seraph specifically. Kiara, in general, really became a more well-rounded character than the character I had known just from seeing a clip or two here of Fate Extra CCC over on YouTube. I'm going to go ahead and... Seraph gets to live in the A tier. Seraph gets to live in the A tier as well. That's fine. That's fine. It's what's happening. Since one of these interludes is a little more recent, let's go ahead and let's work on a couple of Lostbelts. We'll start with Grand Duchess of the Beast Nation. It was a very fitting introduction to the Lostbelt. We had this sort of truly apocalyptic land, and it really gave players a sense of, okay, no, actually, what we're doing can be fairly justified, because this Lostbelt is truly awful. People have to struggle every single day to survive. It's cold as balls. There's a giant elephant man ruling the entire world from Russia, and he has his secret police take down anybody who opposes him. This was a great introduction, much in the way City Fuyuki was a great introduction. I am going to go ahead and I am going to chuck... I was going to go A tier, but I mean, as far as the servants go, I mean... I'm trying to think here. No, Potsy. We only worry about the servants. Potsy puts us in A tier, for sure. Next up, Lostbelt 2, the good fellow of everlasting flame, our boy Napoleon. The Valkyrie stuff was a very interesting take. I was honestly jaw agape when they started explaining to me how the world works, how all of these people ended up having to go out into the wilderness to die when they met a certain age, how this was the piece that Skahawk Scotty had sort of been able to craft for this world. This is what we have to live with. This is just what we have to deal with, and there is really nowhere we can go beyond this. Ophelia was an absolutely great crypter. Ophelia gets a lot of love from the fan base, and it is well deserved from her sort of... just the complexity of the fact of her, like, blind devotion to Kirshtaria. The fact that, no, she's perfectly sure that her Lostbelt is going to lose and it's going to get erased, but she's just maintaining her status quo so Kirshtaria can climb ever higher. I did enjoy that. However, there were other sections. Again, I started getting this feeling of some of these areas were just a little bit of extra plotting to make sure we had enough to do. Napoleon's send-off, though, still very good. I wasn't as engaged as I was with Grand Duchess of Beast Nation go, so I guess that means this goes over into the B tier. Next up is Sin. I love Sin. I love Sin deeply. I love how the world is built. I love this idea of legitimately legendary heroes being kept alive by technology in order to come out and fight you. Some of my favorite characters in all of FGO are introduced in Sin, from Qinshi Wang to Zhang Yu to everyone's beloved Yu Mei Ren, and that reveal of Akuta Hinako, like, if you weren't spoiled and you didn't know that Akuta Hinaku was a, like, ancestor, like, that she's a cryptor, but she's also an ancestor. She's like, oh my god! Like, if you are a Tsukihime boy, that reveal is actually going to cut you super, super deep. In terms of characters, in terms of like this build up to the final confrontation against the Emperor, in terms of Li Shuwen beating you to death with his bare hands and you having to explode tiger tanks, I'm actually going to chuck Sin up in the S tier. Yeah, Sin's going to go in the S tier. Of course, next we need to talk about Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, also known as Yuga Kshetra. Be frank, chat. If you've watched Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods and you watched Yuga Kshetra, the end of that, it's Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods. There was a lot of good stuff in here about, like, Hindu mythology, the whole cycle of the world and all that. That getting shorter and shorter and shorter really does end up making you feel like, wow, there is this legitimate threat. I need to deal with this. I need to deal with this, and I need to do it fast. You really start feeling like in the first two Lostbelts, you're like, okay, this enemy's difficult, but I still feel like we can beat them in these first three. Like, yeah, they've got a bit of divinities. Yeah, we had to deal with Surtur and stuff like that. But we beat them. We beat them. It's fine. We'll be able to survive. Against Arjuna Altar, though, that first time you fight Arjuna Altar, that is a true feeling of hopelessness and despair. Just the story device in and of itself of losing Karna, one of the most powerful servants in the Nasuverse, period, so early on in this singularity, really just gives it a sense of, oh, we might be screwed. Oh, we might legitimately be screwed. I quite enjoyed that feeling in this Lostbelt. So honestly, Yuga Kshetra, yes, you get to live in the S tier for that. Absolutely. We're of course going to be skipping two of these because they are not out on NA yet. Let's go ahead and start with Ooku, though. Ooku was a very enjoyable event. I loved going through the maze, I loved finding all these things at the end of it, and I loved all of the themes around each of the floors. Much like Seraph, I really do feel like Ooku is basically required reading, hence why they made it a main interlude. But it really, like so many events we've gotten, feel like an integral part of the story, to the point where I'm kind of baffled that it wasn't released as such. I'm really, really baffled. Kama having this nice final boss feel at the end of a Dungeons & Dragons labyrinth really helped as well. So Ooku, you get to go live in the A tier. And finally, Atlantis. Listen. If you ain't finished this, you need to go finish this. I don't want to say a lot of stuff. I really don't. Because I know there are some players that watch my channel that are still trying to catch up, that are still trying to get to this end point. This is the newest released piece of content on NA. But let me tell you that every little bit you have experienced in Atlantis is absolutely worth it. If you are a veteran player and you thought Babylonia was pushing up into peak writing with FGO just continuing to get better and better and better, and Epic of Remnant was the slog where it started to dip in quality, this Lostbelt in particular is where you start to feel it really hits that peak of the rise. And the other half of Lostbelt 5 just gets even better. I know it's very hard to say. So Atlantis, I don't really want to spoil much. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to put it in the S tier. And that is going to be where it lives. And that's it, gang. Those are my rankings for the singularities as well as the main interludes. Some surprising stuff swapped around, but there are big facets of public opinion, like the love of Babylonia, that I definitely can agree with. But, of course, I want to know what you all think. What is your most beloved FGO Singularity, and what is your least beloved FGO Singularity? Lostbelt, interlude, whatever. Go ahead and let me know how you feel about the story and where you might potentially want it to go down in the comment section below. Of course, I want to give a big thanks out there to all the patrons on Patreon, all my subscribers and followers on Twitch, and I definitely want to let you know to check out my Discord server if you want to talk about more Fate Grand Order, or in general, gaming content. But anyways, gang, this is Kawaii50. I hope you all have a phenomenal day, and thank you for watching and subscribing. I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye!